the sphere of Marcus Manilius. Divining arts, and stars foreknowing fate, varying the diverse turns of human state. The work of heaven's high reason we bring down in verse, from heaven, and first move Helicon, and its green groves with unacquainted rhymes, offering strange rites, not known to former times. Caesar, thy country's prince and father, thou, to whose imperial laws the world doth bow, who merit what was granted to thy sire. Heaven as a god does this high song inspire. And now, heaven kinder to the curious grows, and courts in verse, its treasure to disclose. Fit task alone for peaceful leisure, rise. We then through yielding air, and mount the skies. There live and range, learn all the signs, and prove how in their adverse course the planets move. To know but which were little, we will sound the hidden entrails of this ample round. Enquire how stars creatures beget and sway, which whilst we sing, Apollo's self shall play. On two altars bright with flames, we raise, repair, to a double shrine, pressed with double care, of verse and matter, on these certain grounds. Raising our song, concordant heaven surrounds its poet with deep harmony, and words scarce fit for Latin characters affords, who to inferior earth did first reveal these gifts of gods, who, what they hid could steal. All-ruling heaven, what mortal dared so high, in spite of gods, himself to deify? Open the highest path, the lowest deep. Tell how the stars their bounded courses keep. The force, and motions of the signs impart. Selenius, thus first taught us this sacred art. Thou thin-most heavens, and utmost stars madest known, that so to nature's power, not face alone, might greater awe, and reverence accrue, and nations learn what to that God was due, who did through seasons, to be known, display the heavens, and this great world's phenomena. Nature helped too, herself improved. And monarchs, next to heaven in power, first moved to affect these arts, who near soul's rising beams. Fierce nations tamed, whose lands the Euphrates streams divide, and the Nile inundates, where the sun, returning, does your Negro cities run. Next, chosen priests, who serve from age to age, at public altars, and with vows engage thy indulgent God, whose awful presence fires their zealous minds with uncorrupt desires. He with himself possessed them, and made known his to unveiled deity unto his own. Such were the men, who first could apprehend that humane fates on wandering stars depend. They to each time applied its own events, and by long toil observed the accidents of many ages, birthdays, lives, what power of fortune governed each successive hour, and what great changes the least motions cause. Thus when heaven's various face, the stars by laws of fate returning in their ordered course, was fully known, and each sign's proper force, experience framed thereof an art, the way shown by example, which through long essay and various speculation, learned from far. The tacit laws of every ruling star saw in alternate course heaven still move round, and fate to vary as its aspects found. For before them, rude man no difference made between nature's works, nor things with reason weighed. Astonished at heaven's new disclosed light, now mourned the stars as lost, now at their sight. As if newborn rejoiced, the uncertain times of day and night, differing in different climes. Till then none knew, nor could the causes clear, of shades unlike the sun far off and near. Yet witty cunning no learned arts had found. Under rude swains waste lay the untilled ground. Gold then in desert mountains lodged at ease. New worlds lay hid in unattempted seas. To waves and winds to trust their lives none dared. To know themselves and theirs, men only cared. But when long time and toil their wits had whet, and wanton edge on industry had set, 10,000 cares their working heads possessed. Whilst to escape need, they sacrificed their rest. Conclusions tried, and what saw wise use, by oft-repeated practice did produce. Of sure effect, the new experiment, unto the common good they gladly lent. Then barbarous tongues received new laws, the earth, manured, to various fruits gave timely birth. Bold seamen the blind ocean did invade, and between strange lands procured mutual trade. Thence arts of war and peace in time arose, for art by practice propagated, grows. What's yet more strange, they learnt the tongues of birds, entrails to inspect, burst snakes with powerful words, called up pale ghosts, moved hell itself, the light turned into darkness, into day the night. Ingenious industry made all things bend, nor put they to their curious search an end, till reason had scaled heaven, thence viewed this round, and nature latent in its causes found. Why thunder does the suffering clouds assail? Why winter's snows more soft than summer's hail? Whence earthquakes come, and subterranean fires? Why showers descend, what force the wind inspires? From error thus she wondering minds uncharmed, unsceptered Jove, the thunderer disarmed, of name and power despoiled him, and assigned fire to the labouring clouds, noise to the wind. These to their proper causes having brought, next on the whole world's mass she casts her thought, of which the system in herself she frames, dispensing to the signs both forms and names, their aspects and their order notes, and saw heaven's changing face gave fatal changes law. This is our muse's theme, as yet displayed in verse by none, propitious fortune aid. The bold attempt, with ease my life befriend, and to a long and cheerful age extend, that so I sink not with my subjects' weight, but with like care, great things, and small relate. Now since from heaven itself our verse descends, and down to earth fate's settled order tends, we first must nature's general state rehearse, and draw the picture of the universe, which, whether it from nothing were derived, or, of beginning both, and end deprived, hath ever been, and ever shall endure. Or chaos severing from the mass obscure. The mixed principles of things, this bright world teemed, whilst darkness took to hell its flight. Or that made up of atoms nature's frame exists, and shall resolve into the same. Some 1,000 ages hence, and almost brought from nothing, fall again to almost naught. Or that the heavenly spheres and globe of earth from fire, not such blind matter, drew their birth, whose flames in all things dwell, kindled heaven's eyes, and form the glittering lightning of the skies. Or sprung from water, which dry matter soaks, and ravenous fire, that would devour it, chokes. Or unbegot were earth, air, water, fire. And these four limbs make up the God entire, and form this world, nor will that aught be found beyond themselves, since all things they compound. Applying hot to cold, to humid dry, to heavy light, which kind discordancy the matrimonial bands of nature knits, and principles for all production fits. We can but guess its birth, obscured it lies beyond the reach of men and deities. Yet though its birth be hid, its form's disclosed, and in due order all its parts disposed. Fire up to the ethereal confines flew, and a round wall of flame about nature drew. The subtle air possessed the second place, diffused throughout the vast globe's middle space, whence its hot neighbor draws cool nourishment. The third lot leveled the wide sea's extent, and in a liquid plain the waters spread, whence hungry air is by thin vapors fed. Pressed down be its sediment, earth lowest fell, whilst sand mixed slime contracting did expel the subtler moisture, which to flight constrained, rose by degrees till it the surface gained, and the more that into pure water went, the more the squeezed out seas the drained earth pent, settling in hollow vales, whilst hills thrust out their heads from waves circling the globe about. This lowest, in the midst is still confined, on all parts equally from heaven disjoined, secured from further falling by its fall, the middle both and bottom of this all, in whose concentring parts, on every side, bodies encountering, are to sink denied. And did not earth by its self-poise suspend, Phoebus, the stars approaching, could not bend his course to set, nor set, here rise again, nor Phoebe drive through the aerial plain her wave-drenched steeds, nor phosphorus the light here usher more, if Hesperus tonight, now in the middle earth suspending thus, not sunk to the bottom, all is pervious, for we nor can the rising stars conceive as casual production, nor believe of the changed heavens, the oft renascent state, soul's frequent births, and his quotidian fate, since the signs always show the self-same face. Heaven keeps one course, the sun one constant race, the moon in certain, although various, ways the changes of her light and orb displays. Nature, the tract which first she made, observes, nor here like an unskilful novice swerves. Day with eternal light is carried round This the times show, in several regions found. Successively the same, and we may see eastward its rise, its setting west to be. The further unto either as we run, continued with heaven's motion, and the sun. Nor need the pendant earth wonder beget, since the whole world suspends as well as it, whose foot upon no certain bottom rests, as its swift course and circular attests. The radiant sun suspended runs its rounds, never transgressing his ethereal bounds. The moon and stars in skies suspended stray, and earth by imitation hangs as they, poised in the middle of circumfluent air, not flatly stretched, but swelled into a sphere, rising alike, and falling everywhere. This is the face of nature, thus the heavens rolled swiftly about, into a round figure's mold. The sun and stars, round is the moon to sight, and with a swelling body bears the light. Hence never wholly lucid is her ball, when the sun's beams on it obliquely fall. A form eternal, like the gods alone, in which, beginning there or end is none, but like throughout, and everywhere the same. Such are the stars, such is the whole world's frame. Hence at ease we see not in all lands all signs. Canopus not till you reach Egypt shines, and they lack Hellas, who see is light. Earth's tumor hindering the intercepted sight. The truth of this thou Cynthia mayst attest, when darkening shadows thy bright looks invest. At once thou dost not all the world amaze, but first the eastern nations miss thy rays. Then those which under the mid-heaven are placed. Next, toward Hesperia fliest thou, cloud-effaced. Then those who yet more distant have their seat. Later, to aid thee, brazen vessels beat. If then the earth were flat, this sad defect of light, the whole world might at once detect. But since it's round, to these first, then to those, her rising self, or setting Delia shows. For carried circular, she first attains the ascending parts, then the descending gains. Now climbs this arch, anon leaves that behind. Whence that the earth is round, we clearly find. This is by men, and beasts, and birds possessed. The north part's eminent, the south depressed. Beneath our feet, whose surface seems to be its breadth deceiving its declivity. Stretched to a lengthful plain, the large extent, composed of equal rising and descent. Hence when sol's beams shine west our orient face, their rising day does sleep from mortals' chase. And when the light to labour summons those, this night with us, and time for our repose, the watery girdle of the ambient main does either hemisphere divide, and chain this world's huge mass framed into one entire, of different parts, as earth, air, water, fire. A power I divine, whose sacred influence glides through all its limbs, with tacit reason guides, and mutual leagues inclines them to contract, that some may suffer, what the others act. And the whole frame, although diversified by various figures, be throughout allied. Now we the radiant signs in order sing. First those which suspend heaven with an oblique ring, and Phoebus by alternate courses bear through the successive seasons of the year. Then those whose course to heaven is opposite, all which may numbered be in a clear night, the laws of fate depending on their power. First then of heaven's chief part, its starry tower, the princely ram glittering in golden wool, wonders to see the backward rising bull. With submiss looks beckon the twins, next whom Cancer, who after him sees Leo come. Him as Virgo follows, then the scales, that way. In even balance equal night and day. Draw on the scorpion with the fiery sting, at which the centaur his shaft levelling seems ready to let fly. To these comes on the goat's contracted constellation. Aquarius next pours from his urn a flood, whilst the glad fish to the loved waters scud, by Aries touched, and make the closing sign. Now in the skies near where the bright bears shine, which from heaven's top on all the stars look down, nor know to set but placed on the world's crown, though differently, whirl round the stars and skies. Stretched through thin air the subtle axis lies, whose distant poles the balanced fabric hold. Round this the star-embellished orbs are rowed, whilst yet itself unmoved through empty air, and the earth's globe extends to either bare. Nor is it a solid substance, or oppressed with weight, though the world's weight upon it rest, but as the air moved in a circle goes, and on itself, whence first it flowed, reflows. What here that is which still the midst doth hold, bout which, itself unmoved, all else is rolled, so subtle it can no way be inclined, that by the name of axis is designed, upon whose top, to mariners' distress well known, their guides through seas, two bright signs rest. Great Hellas moves in a greater bend, marked with 7 fair stars, the Greek pilot's friend. Small sign ashore, less both in light and size. A less orb holds, whom yet the Tyrians prize more than the great, by this the Punics steer through vast seas to the western hemisphere. These join not fronts, but either's head turns to the other's tall, pursued, as they pursue. Between both which, his large unfolded spires a serpent stretches, and with winding fires embracing them, one from the other parts, and from their station sees that neither starts. Between this, and heaven's mid-circle, where the sun and 6 lights more against the bright zodiac run, rise stars of different magnitude and power, some near the pole, some near heaven's radiant tower, which tempered by the disagreeing air, the fruitful earth for humane use prepare. Next the cold bears, the cause to himself best known, shines forth a kneeling constellation, behind whose back Octophylax appears, the same Boötes called, because yoked steers. He seeming drives, who through the rapid skies, bearing Arcturus in his bosom, hies. On the other side see the rich crown display its luminous gems, bright with a different ray, whom the swift courser strives to overtake, his breast with a refulgent signature impressed, which closes in the fair Andromeda. Kind Perseus' shoulder lends her feet stay, and joins to himself, but a large space divides. Deltaton brighter in its base than sides. So called from its resemblance, Cephus. And Cassiopeia made conspicuous. Even to her punishment, seems to deplore. Andromeda chained to the rocky shore. Fearing the gaping monster of the deep. But Perseus still does his old kindness keep. Comes to her aid, and of the Gorgon slain. Shows the feared head, his spoil the seer's bane. Close running by the kneeling bull, behold. Heniocus, who gained by skill of old. Heaven and his name, as first 4 steeds he drove. On flying wheels, seen, and installed by Jove. The kids next, the seas barring till the spring. Then the goat, nursed to the world's infant king. Who from her teats schooled heaven, her milk, did grow. To brandish lightning, and feared thunder throw. By her own love a constellation made. And for the heaven she gave, with heaven repaid. Last view of the Pleiades and the Hyades. Both parts of the bull, the northern signs are these. Now see the stars which above the scorched earth run. Rising beneath the pathway of the sun. And those which between the tropic are confined. Of Capricorn, and pole that is declined. Near to the twins behold Orion rise. With stretched arms almost fathoming the skies. Nor marching with a less extended pace. Bright shining stars his either shoulder grace. 3 lights his pendant sword obliquely sign. In his advanced head 3 others shine. Deep in the skies immersed, nor yet less bright. Though such they seem, cause more removed from sight. Him, as through heaven he marches, follow all. The starry legions as their general. Next after whom with rapid motion bent. No star than that against earth more violent. The fierce dog runs, not one for heat does rise. Not one for cold more grievous quits the skies. The world afflicting with a different fate. Nor ever fails upon the sun to wait. Who this from Taurus crown first rising see. Guess thence of fruits what the event may be. What health, what quiet may the year befall. Here war it makes, there peace does reinstall. And as it variously returns, doth awe. The inferior world, its aspect is their law. It is strongly credited this owns a light. And runs a course not than the sun's less bright. But that removed from sight so great a way. It seems to cast a dim and weak array. All other stars it foils, none in the main. Is drenched, or brighter thence ascends again. Next, with the nimble hare see Procyon rise. And then the noble Argo, to the skies. From seas translated which she first did plough. Once lost with mighty storms, in heaven fixed now. And deified for saving deities. Close boarding her a glittering serpent lies. And by so ordered lights, seems to present. His speckled body's scaly ornament. Sol's bird, the cup dear to the god of wine. And centaur next in a mixed shape does shine. Half man, half horse, then heaven's bright temple see. And altar consecrate to victory. What time the enraged earth a giant race against heaven produced, then gods besought the grace of the great gods, and Jove himself feared too. He wanted power to do what he could do. The princely ram glittering in golden wool wonders to see the backward rising bull. With submiss looks beckon the twins, next whom Cancer, who after him sees Leo come. Him as Virgo follows, then the scales, that way. In even balance equal night and day. Draw on the scorpion with the fiery sting, at which the centaur his shaft levelling seems ready to let fly. To these comes on the goat's contracted constellation. Aquarius next pours from his urn a flood, whilst the glad fish to the loved waters scud, by Eris touched, and make the closing sign. Now in the skies near where the bright bears shine, which from heaven's top on all the stars look down, nor know to set but placed on the world's crown, though differently, whirl round the stars and skies. Stretched through thin air the subtle axis lies, whose distant poles the balanced fabric hold. Round this the star-embellished orbs are rowed, whilst yet itself unmoved through empty air, and the earth's globe extends to either bare. Nor is it a solid substance, or oppressed with weight, though the world's weight upon it rest. But as the air moved in a circle goes, and on itself, whence first it flowed, reflows. What here that is which still the midst doth hold? Bout which, itself unmoved, all else is rolled. So subtle it can no way be inclined, that by the name of axis is designed, upon whose top, to mariners' distress, well known, their guides through seas, two bright signs rest. Great Hellas moves in a greater bend, marked with 7 fair stars, the Greek pilot's friend. Small sign ashore, less both in light and size. A less orb holds, whom yet the Tyrians prize more than the great, by this the Punics steer through vast seas to the western hemisphere. These join not fronts, but either's head turns to the other's tall, pursued, as they pursue. Between both which, his large unfolded spires a serpent stretches, and with winding fires embracing them, one from the other parts, and from their station sees that neither starts. Between this, and heaven's mid-circle, where the sun and 6 lights more against the bright zodiac run, rise stars of different magnitude and power, some near the pole, some near heaven's radiant tower, which tempered by the disagreeing air, the fruitful earth for humane use prepare. Next the cold bears, the cause to himself best known, shines forth a kneeling constellation, behind whose back Arctophylax appears, the same Boötes called, because yoked steers. He seeming drives, who through the rapid skies, bearing Arcturus in his bosom, hies. On the other side see the rich crown display its luminous gems, bright with a different ray, whom the swift courser strives to overtake, his breast with a refulgent signature impressed, which closes in the fair Andromeda. Kind Perseus' shoulder lends her feet a stay, and joins to himself, but a large space divides, deltaton brighter in its base than sides, so called from its resemblance, Cephus. and Cassiopeia made conspicuous. Even to her punishment, seems to deplore. Andromeda chained to the rocky shore, fearing the gaping monster of the deep. But Perseus still does his old kindness keep. Comes to her aid, and of the Gorgon slain, shows the feared head, his spoil the seer's bane. Close running by the kneeling bull, behold, Heniocus, who gained by skill of old heaven and his name, as first 4 steeds he drove on flying wheels, seen, and installed by Jove. The kids next, the seas barring till the spring. Then the goat, nurse to the world's infant king, who from her teats schooled heaven, her milk, did grow, to brandish lightning, and feared thunder throw. By her own love a constellation made, and for the heaven she gave, with heaven repaid. Last view of the Pleiades and the Hyades. Both parts of the bull, the northern signs are these. Now see the stars which above the scorched earth run, rising beneath the pathway of the sun. And those which between the tropic are confined, of Capricorn, and pole that is declined. Near to the twins behold Orion rise, with stretched arms almost fathoming the skies, nor marching with a less extended pace. Bright shining stars his either shoulder grace. 3 lights his pendant sword obliquely sign. In his advanced head 3 others shine. Deep in the skies immersed, nor yet less bright, though such they seem, cause more removed from sight. Him, as through heaven he marches, follow all the starry legions as their general. Next after whom with rapid motion bent, no star than that against earth more violent. The fierce dog runs, not one for heat does rise, not one for cold more grievous quits the skies. The world afflicting with a different fate, nor ever fails upon the sun to wait. Who this from Taurus' crown first rising see, guess thence of fruits what the event may be. What health, what quiet may the year befall. Here war it makes, there peace does reinstall. And as it variously returns, doth awe the inferior world, its aspect is their law. It is strongly credited this owns a light, and runs a course not than the sun's less bright, but that removed from sight so great a way, it seems to cast a dim and weak ray. All other stars it foils, none in the main is drenched, or brighter thence ascends again. Next, with the nimble hare see Procyon rise, and then the noble Argo, to the skies. From seas translated which she first did plow, once lost with mighty storms, in heaven fixed now, and deified for saving deities. Close boarding her a glittering serpent lies, and by so ordered lights, seems to present his speckled body's scaly ornament. Soul's bird, the cup dear to the god of wine, and centaur next in a mixed shape does shine. Half man, half horse, then heaven's bright temple see, and altar consecrate to victory. What time the enraged earth a giant race against heaven produced, then gods besought the grace of the great gods, and Jove himself feared too. He wanted power to do what he could do. When he amazed the rising earth beheld, How even against nature's self, nature rebelled. Saw mountains heaped on mountains to aspire, and stars from the approaching hills retire, charged with dire arms by a deformed birth, issuing from ruptures of the teeming earth. No victim bearers yet the gods had known, or that there were powers greater than their own. Then did heaven's king this starry altar raise, whose fires even yet with brightest lustre blaze, near which the whale raising his scaly limbs, in large wreaths, wallowing on his belly swims, and gapes as ready just to seize his prey, as when the same the exposed Andromeda, to her sad fate approaching once beheld, who the forced waves beyond their shore impelled. In heaven's south part, the fish then from the wind, called southern, rises, close to which conjoined, in mighty flexures starry rivers run. One of their heads flow from Aquarius' ton, whose waters by communicated streams meet in the midst, and mix sidereal beams between the ecliptic and the latent bears, which about the creaking axis turn the spheres. Heaven's stranger orb with these stars painted shines, which ancient poets called the southern signs. The rest of the world lies under water hid, where unknown realms, lands to our sight forbid, take from one sun with us a common light, but several shadows, and a different night, where stars sinistral set, and dextral rise, their heaven as ample, nor less bright their skies, their stars as numerous, only thus outvied, in that to them Augustus stars denied, which does our world with rays propitious bless, earth's present, and heaven's future happiness, that the extremes which, bout the nether pole, decked with bright stars, though inconspicuous, roll, the upper poles resemble, with signs graced, like that, where bears with fronts averse are placed, and by one dragon parted, we suppose, induced to credit what example shows, for reason urges from analogy, the parts unseen are like to those we see. These several stations, by large skies disjoined, to all the constellations are assigned, yet think not they corporeal figures are, or all their members equal lustre share. Heaven could not suffer so intense a heat, were no part void, but all with fire replete. Some therefore cautious nature kept from flame, lest it should hazard the celestial frame, only to mark their figures out content, and signs by certain stars to represent, whose lights design their shapes, fire answers fire, mean to extremer, the lower to the higher. It is enough they are not hidden quite. Some stars the moon half full show greatest light, but all the nameless commons of the sky, obscured by her completed splendor, fly. The brighter signs yet nor their number change, nor with less stars in mixed motion range, but the same course, the better to be known, and order, in their rise and setting, own. Nor in this world may aught more wonder raise, than that the whole reason, and laws, obeys, where nothing's crowded, nothing loosely roves, or cross to its determined order, moves. What more confused in show? Yet what in course? more certain, a clear reason to enforce that this world's governed by a deity, and is itself a god, nor casually together met, as he would once persuade, who first the walls of this wide system made, of atoms, and to those resolves again, of which, the solid earth, the floating main, the fiery stars, and ether that creates infinite orbs, and others dissipates, consist, all which revert unto their springs, and transmutate the various forms of things. But who can think this world educt should be from such blind grounds without a deity? If chance did give, chance rules this all, whence are the signs then in their course so regular? Rising by turns, as if by laws enjoined, none posting on, whilst others stay behind. The same star's summer, the same winter grace, day takes, and leaves to heaven one certain face. What time Troy's state was by the Greeks undone, opposed did Arctos and Orion run. She the world's top to circle still content, he facing her, to round the whole firmament. The times of obscure night were then divined. From the bright stars, heaven had its hours designed. Since when how many kingdoms waste are late, how many nations have been captive made, a empire and servitude how oft dissolved by fortune's power, and differently revolved. Troy's ashes now to what a glorious state she re-inspires. Greece suffers Asia's fate. 'Twere tedious to recount the ages past. How oft the sun hath seen the world new cast. All things by humane laws created, change. Lands to each other known, in time grow strange. Nations in course of many years, put on a various face, but heaven wears always one. Grows not by length of days, nor wastes with age. Always in course, yet faints not in its stage. Will ever be the same, since such 'twas ever. Other than it is our fathers saw it never. Nor shall our nephews, it is a God, and knows nothing of change, which age and time impose. That the sun never starts to the north side, nor changing course back to the east does ride. And to strange lands a newborn day disclose. That the moon always the same changes shows. The laws observed of her increase and wane. That stars themselves from falling still sustain. And run in measured courses, seems to sense. No work of chance, but act of providence. These signs divided thus by equal space. Heaven's azure ceiling with gold fretwork grace. Bove which is nothing, there the world's height ends. Nor further nature's public house extends, which seas embraces and the earth's round ball. All these in mutual courses rise and fall, as the revolving skies, here downward bend, beneath the horizon, and there reascend. Now to what compass heaven's extremest round is stretched, what limits the bright zodiac bound? Reason will teach, to whom there's nothing hard, from whom by space or bulk nothing's debarred. To her all stoop, she sounds the depths of night, and heaven itself is pervious to her sight. How far the stars area above the earth and main, So great the spaces, which two signs contain. And if the world's diameter you take, that, with small difference, will a third part make of its circumference, for signs then, so far. Heaven's zenith and its nadir distant are, and twice four added its whole round complete. But since out of midst earth of its pendant seat, it is two signs distant from heaven's depth or height. Thus all which above the earth is reached by sight, or underneath, by that unseen, extends. Each way the space of two signs comprehends, and 6 times that measures the circle, where 12 constellations equal mansions share. Nor wonder that the self-same signs create uncertain births mixed with much different fate. Since each 6 rising with their lights entire, so great a space, and so long time require. It rests, we now the ethereal bounds design, the circles which the parted heavens confine, and of the stars the splendid order steer. One towered the north sustains the shining bear, and from the pole 6 parts of heaven retires, the other touching Cancer's utmost fires, where Phoebus consummates his light and stay, bearing through tedious rounds the tardy day, does from the season, and midsummer's heat, derive its name, and to the sun's race set the extremest bound, which 5 parts of the whole declines the circle of the northern pole. The third, which the world's middle region holds, Olympus with a mighty bend infolds, on either hand viewing the pole, the way in which the sun makes even night and day, when by the springs and autumn's points he glides, and heaven out of midst by equal parts divides. This from the solstice 4 degrees retreats, the next beyond named from the winter, sets the utmost bound to the sun's backward flight, obliquely rendering us his niggard light. By a short course, but long over those he stays, whose lands are warmed by his director rays. The slow-paced day they're hardly passing round. This from the equator 4 degrees is found. One circle more yet rests, whose sight inclines toward the South Pole, and southern bears confines, ranged from the winter tropic 5 degrees, and near its pole, as the north's far from his. Thus heaven in 2 divided, pole from pole, does by that double sum measure the whole, and by 5 bounds distinguished into climes, marks out the difference of place and times, which, parallels, one course with heaven partake, and equal rise with that and setting make, since in the ethereal texture they observe their stated distance, and thence never swerve, passing across by either pole 2 more. There are, which intersect all those before, and themselves too, concurring in the extremes of the world's axis at right-angled schemes, which mark the seasons out, and heaven beside, into 4 quarters equally divide. Of these, through highest heaven its course one steers, parting the serpent's tail and undrenched bears, and tips of Scorpio's claws, borne through mid-skies, of Hydra cutting the extremities, and middle of the southern centaur, then concurring in the adverse pole, again returns by the huge whale, whose scaly chine, bright trigon, and the bounds the ram confine. It marks, then by Cepheus' waist doth run, her mother's head, and ends where it begun. By the midst of this, the world's extremity, and the forefeet and neck of Hellas, which first of all when Sol withdraws his light, with 7 fair stars illuminates the night. The other runs, the crab and twins divides, by the fierce dog and Argo's steerage glides. Then cross the former's traversed signs is borne, by the South Pole, the touching Capricorn, parting the eagle from its starry fires, by the lyre running, and the dragon's spires. Then cuts the less bear's tall and hinder feet, and makes its end with its beginning meet. The seasons thus have fixed within these rounds their everlasting seats and changeless bounds. These two are movable, whereof one bend does through mid-heaven from Hellas ascend. The day distinguishes, the 6th hour tries, and at just distance east and west descries, changing the signs by turns, still as we run, or toward the rising or the setting sun, cutting heaven's high-tide midst, and with earth's place, varies the sky's position, and time's race. All have not one meridian, the hours fly round. When first we see Sol rise from the eastern sound, it is their 6th hour by his gold orb then pressed. Such theirs, when he to us sets in the west. These 2 6th hours we count our first, and last, when from the extremes of light chill beams are cast. The others bound if thou desirest to know. Look round about far as thy sight will go. Whatever earth's surface with heaven's verge doth close, and the divided hemispheres compose, couches in seas the stars and thence doth send, rounding the traversed earth with a slight bend, that, shifting place about the world still flies, now more and more unto the south applies, now to the north again as much inclines, now runs against, now with the moved signs. But wheresoever its wandering course it steers, as now to this, then to that part it bears, it changes still, a new arch always making, for leaving now this heaven, then that forsaking. One half it will still disclose, or hide, and sign, with varying limits which the sight confine. This is terrestrial, cause the earth it rounds, and called horizon, because the sight it bounds. To these 2 others add, obliquely born, whereof the one 12 radiant signs adorn, through which the sun runs his career of light, and the moon follows in her coach of night, and 5 stars more against heaven's swift course advance, their oppositely nature-guided dance, on whose top Cancer, base the goat resides. Twice through the equator runs it, twice divides, at Libra and the ram, whose sloping bend obliquely by 3 circles does extend, not hid, nor, as the rest, discerned alone, by mental view, to mental view is shown, but shines a glittering belt with bright stars graced, and girdles with its golden fires heaven's waste. Degrees 300 and thrice 20 counts. Its circles round, its breadth to 12 amounts, within which measured limits is confined. The planet's motion, variously inclined. The other, carried toward the opposed bears its course close by the Arctic Circle steers, and by inverted Cassiopeia tends. Thence by the Swan obliquely it descends. The summer tropic, and Ives bird divides. Then cross the equator and the zodiac glides between Scorpio's burning tail, and the left part of Sagittarius, near the fiery dart. Then by the other centaur's legs and feet, winding, remounts the skies, again to meet. By Argo's topsail and heaven's middle sphere, passing the twins to over-retake the charioteer. Thence Cassiopeia seekingly does run over Perseus' head, and ends where it begun. 3 middle circles and the zodiac 2. Twice passing, and by that as oft passed through. Nor needs it to be sought, its obvious course itself illustrates, and the sight doth force. For in the azure skies its candid way shines like the dawning morn, or closing day. And as by often passing over some green, an even path, parting the mead, is seen. Or as a ship ploughing the sea's smooth plain, of foaming bubbles leaves a silver train. So shines its milky path in the dark night, parting the blue skies with its numerous light. And as through clouds the rainbow does extend, so on Olympus' height shows its white bend. And mortals fills with wonder, whilst they spy new lights, unknown flames darting through the sky. The sacred causes humane breasts inquire, whether the heavenly segments there attire, the whole mass shrinking, and the parting frame through cleaving chinks admits the stranger flame. Astonishment must sure their senses reach, to see the world's wounds, and heaven's gaping breach. All meets heaven here, and this white cloud appears, the cement of the close-wedged hemispheres. Or seems that old opinion of more sway, that the sun's horses here once ran astray, and a new path marked in their straggling flight, of scorched skies, and stars adjusted light, changing to paler white heaven's azure face, and with the burnt world's ashes strewed the place. Fame likewise from old time to us succeeds, how Phaeton driving his father's steeds through radiant signs, and with a wounding eye, viewing the approached beauties of the sky, whilst in his chariot proud he childlike plays, and things yet greater than his sire essays, left the known path, and a rough tract impressed in the smooth skies, whilst wandering flames infest the affrighted signs, not brooking the loose course of the erring chariot and ill-guided horse. Hence the whole world became a fiery spoil, and burning cities made earth's funeral pile, when from the hurried chariot lightning fled, and scattered blazes all the skies overspread, by whose approach new stars enkindled were, which still as marks of that sad chance appear. Nor must that gentler rumour be suppressed, how milk once flowing from fair Juno's breast stained the celestial pavement, from whence it came. This milky path, its course shown in its name. Or is it a crowd of stars crowning the night, a candid diadem of condensed light? Or valiant souls freed from corporeal gyves, thither repair and lead ethereal lives? There the Atrides, there the Aeacides, fierce Diomede, he who through lands and seas his triumphs over conquered nature reared. Subtle Ulysses, we believe in sphered. Their nesters throned among the Grecian peers, crowned with a triple century of years. Aurora's black sun, he who Lycia swayed, Jove's royal issue, and thou martial maid, the kings whom Asia did or Greece beget, or Pella justly greatest in the great. There those whom wisdom hath exalted, shine. Just Solon, stout Lycurgus, the divine. Plato, and he who made him such, whose doom justly condemns his Athens, he by whom Persia was foiled, which strode with fleets the main, and Roman worthies, the more numerous train. There's all their kings but the proud Tarquin, there the Horatii, who their side's sole army were. Scaevola glorying in his arm's stump, then Clelia although a maid more brave than men. Cocles with Rome's walls crowned which he maintained. And he who by a crow's assistance gained both spoils and name, Corvinus, on whose crest Phoebus does in his black-plumed emblem rest. Camillus too, who heaven with Jove may claim, whom saving Rome, we may Rome's founder name. The generous Brutus her enfranchiser, Papirius, who revenged the Pyrrhic war, stayed Curius, and Fabricius, a stern pair. Marcellus, who the third rich trophies bear, and Cossus second, from kings spoiled of life. The Decii in their vows at noble strife. In honours equal, Fabius, Rome's defence. In war unconquered, by the war's suspense. Livius the victor of slain Asdrubal, with Nero the joint author of his fall. The Scipios unto Carthage both won fate. Pompey, before Caesar prince of Rome's great state. And the awed world, which thrice his triumph sung. And Tullius worthy heaven for his sweet tunge. There the great Claudian progeny does shine. And all the worthies of the Aemilian line. Metelli, signal for their noble name. Cato, who fortune even in death overcame. Agrippa, soldier from his mother's breast. Venus her Julian offspring, repossessed of heaven, whence first descended, which now proves the rule of great Augustus joined with Jove's, who among the deathless deities enrolled his father and Quirinus doth behold. More high the immortal gods have fixed their seat. Next whom, is this, with godlike men replete. But of the stars ever we the laws rehearse, and fatal changes, we the universe must first complete and show what does dispense throughout the whole, or light, or influence. Some stars there are which against the world's course bend, and wandering between the earth and heaven suspend. As Saturn, Jove, Mars, Phoebus, Maia's son, placed under these between Venus and the moon. Others there are too of less usual kind. For sudden flames streaming through skies we find, and times more rare have comets seen to blaze, and loose midst mighty stirs their threatening rays. Whether as earth transpires its native fumes, those humid spirits the hot air consumes, when a long drought from clouds hath cleared the sky, and heaven by the sun's scorching beams grows dry. whence fitting aliment is snatched by fire, and matter like to tinder flames acquire. And since the principles which air compose are not gross bodies, but like smoke that flows, the fiery substance is not permanent, but with the comet, soon as kindled, spent. Else, if its rise and fall were not so nigh, we should another day in night descry, and the couched sun, when from the watery deep returned, would the whole world surprise in sleep. Then since the arid vapor is not used to be alike attracted, or diffused, hence several shapes to meteors are assigned, as in dark nights their sudden births they find. For now, like long hairs flowing from some head, the flame is in dishevelled tresses spread. Then what a fiery peruke first appeared assumes the figure of a blazing beard. Sometimes between equal bounded sides it flows, and a square post, or a round pillar shows. Like a big-bellied tun now its swollen beams dilate, and then contract to narrower streams, like little locks which in small curls are tied. Now like fired sheafs, now like branched lamps described. Now falling stars seem to shoot everywhere, when wandering lights do sparkle in the air, and darted flames swift arrows imitate. When the dry train runs in a narrow strait, for everything does mixed fire enfold, that dwells in pregnant clouds which thunder mould, pierces earth's veins, heaven's terrors counterfeits. From Etna's caves, in spring's cold water heats, lurks in hard flints, and in green bark finds room. When woods by their collision flames assume, so fertile every matter is in fire, nor sudden flames breaking through skies admire, nor frequent coruscations by earth's hot exhaling vapors in the air begot, which the swift-feeding flame pursues or flies, since trembling lightning darted through the skies, thou mayest behold in midst of falling rain, and thunder through forced clouds its way constrain, whether from fiery seeds enclosed in earth, and thence emitted, comets draw their birth, or nature did those fading lights design, as subunited stars in heaven to shine, or the sun's rapid course these meteors rears, and draws to himself, his flames involving theirs, and now dismisses, like Selenius light, or fair Dion's star, usher to night, which often shine, as oft the sight delude, hiding themselves, and then again are viewed. Or God in pity to our humane state sends these as nuncios of ensuing fate. Never did heaven with these fires vainly burn, deluded swains their blasted labours mourn, and the tired husbandman to fruitless toil compels his oxen in a barren soil. Or the lethiferous fire their bodies kills, wasting their marrows out with lingering ills. People consumes, whole towns depopulates, whilst flaming piles conclude the public fates. Through Erecthian lands as that plague strayed, old Athens waste by peaceful funerals late, when each contracted other's death, whilst art no cure could find, nor prayers no help impart. Care to the sick, and funerals to the dead, even tears were wanting, those no mourners shed. the wearied flame did from its office cease, and heaps of fired bones burnt dead carcasses, whilst to so great a people scarce an heir remained. Such woes dire comets often declare. They bring with them the world's last funeral fire, in which sick nature one day must expire. Wars they proclaim too, tumults to arise, and open arms from secret treacheries. So when the nations late from faith withdrew, when the fierce Germans our great Varus slew, and fields in blood of 3 whole legions drowned, through all the skies such ominous lights were found, as if with those warred nature, and against ours, threatening an end to all, opposed her powers. No wonder men and states such mischiefs grieve. The faults at home, we will not heaven believe. Often civil wars, and kindred arms they raise. Nor more did heaven with such fires ever blaze, than when fierce leaders joining bloody hands, ranged on Philippic plains confederate bands. The Roman soldiers on sands yet scarce dry, trampled fresh relics of mortality. Empire, itself with its own strength assailed, but great Augustus, Julius-like, prevailed. Yet ends not there, the action battles fought, when armies as a fatal tea-dowry brought, once more engaged for the world's glorious prize, and sought at sea, a ruler of the skies. When fleets did on a woman's sway depend, Nile's timbrels against Rome's thunder durst contend. There yet remained the servile war behind, when with his country's foes young Pompey joined, harassed those seas his father did defend. But this sufficed the fates, now let wars end, and adamantine fetters discord bind, to close restraint eternally confined, whilst father of his country never overcome. Augustus lives, such too beneath him, Rome, and when a god she to a heavenly throne resigns him up, else in the world seek none.